Coaching. Member Syndicate, Professor and Head, Department of Educational Technology in Tamilnadu Teachers Education University, Chennai. We welcome you, sir. And I would like to welcome all the participants, and I hope we are all to keep an open mind and enjoy each part of the session in the spirit of which it has been conceived. Now the session is handed over to Dr.T.Velayuthan Nair, sir, to present the topic. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Okay, and is my presentation visible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, thank you. Hello and a very warm good afternoon to all of you. It feels wonderful to be here on this platform that is offered by the Tamilnadu Teacher Education University that's currently being headed by Dr.N.Ramakrishnan. I had the fortune to meet him for the first time last year, and ever since we have been on touch. And when he called me and asked if I'd be interested in delivering a short presentation, I immediately said yes. Thank you so much, Dr. Ramakrishnan, for inviting me over, and the program conveners for having me here. It's such a pleasure and honor to be talking to you today afternoon. A few days back, I was thinking of a topic that I could discuss with you today, and my wife kept calling me for dinner. She called me once, she called me twice, she called me thrice, and the fourth time she did, I shouted at her from my study room and asked her why she had to keep on calling me like this, you know, as if I were a small kid. So she came into the room, looked at me and asked, "That is something that I can perfectly understand, but why are you so angry? And that too for a very small reason as this. Why are you shouting at me?" So the point I'm trying to make is that anger is probably one of the commonest of emotions that is experienced by all of us every day. And we get irritated and angry, you know, at the world around us for umpteen reasons. But for some of us, anger becomes an issue. And starts overshadowing all of the emotions that we experience. It becomes an issue when it starts interfering, you know, with our interactions with the people around us, and when it starts having an impact on relationships that we have with other people, and when it starts showing signs and symptoms of destroying ourselves. So this short presentation that would last about an hour would take a close look at what anger is, how it influences the quality of our daily lives, and if it's possible to control our anger in some way or the other. It's very important that I clearly delineate between what you can expect from this short presentation and what you should not expect from this short presentation, because then it helps to, you know, put things into a clear perspective. So this is going to be a discussion on anger, some very common anger myths. We'll also have a discussion on the flight or fight response, symptoms of anger, the anger build-up process, the anger iceberg. What is the anger style that you have as a person? We'll also discuss the phenomenon of the emotional contagion, and then we'll take a look at anger management and anger control tips. But what you should probably not expect from this presentation are hard and fast tricks to change behavioral patterns overnight. You should not also, you know, expect one-click solutions to control your anger. So these are things that you can expect from this presentation, and these are things that you should probably not expect from this presentation. I start today's presentation by examining what anger is, you know, and by listing 5 facts that you should know about it. So what is anger? As I've already told you, anger is the commonest of all emotions that we experience every day, and it's a very natural response to the several threats that constantly arise, you know, all around us. It causes your body to release adrenaline, and your muscles tighten up, your heart rate increases, your blood pressure rises up, and your senses might feel a little bit more acute, and your face and your hands and all might feel flushed. And then you respond to this emotion that suddenly erupts in you. So this is what anger is all about. I want you to take a look at 5 interesting facts about anger that we need to be familiar with if we are planning to understand anger as an emotion. Number 1 is, anger can be the strongest motivation, if you want, if taken in a positive manner. It can also become the strongest enemy when it's left uncontrolled. Number two hormones, adrenaline and cortisol, are released into your bloodstream when we are in anger. And these are the chemicals that act as a strong boost to our body muscles for several minutes. Number three, anger stops growth of neurons, especially new neurons in your brain. Thus, growth of the brain is weakened when a person becomes angry. Number four, chronic and uncontrolled exhausted anger can directly lead to heart attack or paralysis, as pressure in the veins begins to rise with increase in anger and so on. And the last one, number five, it might sound a bit funny, but people tend to eat very less or they overeat when they are in stressful situations, especially when they're angry. Let's now take a look at 5 common myths about anger that we have all heard at some point. Myth 1 is this: I shouldn't hold in my anger. It's healthy to vent and let it out. While it's true that suppressing and ignoring anger is unhealthy, venting is also no better. Anger is not something you have to let out every time in a highly aggressive way in order to avoid blowing up. In fact, outbursts and tirades only fuel the fire. It reinforces your anger problem. So, it's not necessary that you vent out your anger every time you experience it. That is myth 1. Myth 2. Anger, aggression, and intimidation help me earn respect and get what I want. Now, respect doesn't come from bullying others. We know that. People may be afraid of you, but they don't respect you if you can't control yourself or handle your, viewpoints. So others will be more willing to listen to you, in fact, and accommodate your needs if you communicate it in a very respectful way. So anger, in fact, does not gain you respect. That is myth 2. Myth 3 is, I can't help myself. Anger is not something you can control. I can't control my anger. That is, again, a myth that all of us have probably told, like at least the few of us who have had anger issues have told ourselves at some point of time or the other. You can't always control the situation you're in or, how it makes you feel, but you can control how you express your anger. And you can communicate your feelings without being verbally abusive or physically abusive. And even if someone is, pushing your buttons, even if someone is driving you crazy, you always have a choice about how to respond to the situation. So anger can be controlled irrespective of what you think about it. The 4th myth is, men are angrier than women. Now, media, especially literature, frequently reflect and perpetuate the belief that, boys and men are naturally angrier than girls and women, and that, their anger is righteous and more violent. Men tend to be more violent and angrier than women. This is not the fact at all. But research consistently shows that men are no more likely than women to be angry. In fact, women report feeling anger more frequently, and in more sustained ways. In early 2016, for example, there was a national survey that was conducted by Esquire and NBC, and this survey actually found out, that women reported consistently higher rates of anger than men. And there was also another survey that was conducted by Elle magazine 2 years later, and this revealed the same pattern. So this is again a myth that men are always angrier than women. And the last myth is, anger is destructive. No, anger is not always destructive. In fact, the APA, American Psychological Association, points out, that anger is completely normal. In fact, it's usually healthy. It's a human emotion that turns destructive only when it's not acknowledged and only when it's not understood. So anger can be channelized productively and creatively, and often with very powerful and lasting emotions. So these are the 5 myths that we need to take into consideration if we are supposed to understand what the emotion of anger is all about. Now, you might have heard of the flight, fight, and freeze response. Now, there's a story of the teacher who wanted to create an awareness regarding the difficulties that are faced by physically challenged people. So she thought it would be a good idea to start off with examining herself and suggesting that imperfection, having an imperfection in oneself is okay. It is nothing to be ashamed of. Being imperfect is nothing to be ashamed of. So this is the idea that she wanted to convey. So she said, look at my eyes. They're not really good. They're bad, in fact. so I have to wear my glasses. Look at my ears. They're not that good either. Sometimes I have to have a hearing aid. So she started off with an introduction like this, and then she waited for that idea to sink in. When there was a boy who was sitting right at the back, and she said, and this boy said, he just put up his hands and said, "Ma'am, I think you forgot your nose. Your nose is not that good either. It looks crooked." So this is a very tricky situation. Now, if you were a teacher, how do you respond to a situation like this? It is okay if you're pointing out your own mistakes, but when somebody else points out a mistake, it turns out to be a little bit awkward. So this is a situation that demands a fight or a flight response. Any demanding situation, in fact, like this, prompts an individual with two options. One is a fight, the other one is flight. So either you could stay back, take a look at the situation, and give it right back to them. You could start a fight, or the person could just run for his life. In fact, there is a third option as well, which is a freeze response. A freeze response is sometimes we are neither able to fight nor fly. We just freeze on the spot just like that, unable to make any response at all. And it is here that our emotional intelligence, in fact, comes to play. So in the situation that we talked about just now, the teacher has two options. She can either fight it by taking the statement lightly, appreciate the humor behind it and move on. She could also fight it by losing her temper and severely rebuking the student, for having come up with such an insensitive remark that makes fun of her nose. She could fly from it by pretending that she never heard the comment in the first place. She could just pretend, she could just pretend to ignore it. The point is, the response that she makes in this situation would ultimately depend on her emotional intelligence. Now, is anger normal? Yes, anger is normal, and it's the most natural emotion that you can possibly have, and everyone gets angry sometimes. So it's a way of, it's a very common way in which we release our mental and emotional pressure. There are times when anger is useful even, for example, when we are trying to stand up for our rights or protect ourselves or other people from harm. So it's not wrong to feel angry at all, and it's as natural as other feelings such as happiness, excitement, sadness, grief, and so on that we very commonly experience. When does anger become a problem then? Anger becomes a problem when you have trouble controlling it. When anger causes you to say or do things you regret. In a 2010 study found out that uncontrolled anger is bad for your physical and emotional health. It can also quickly escalate, to verbal or physical violence, harming you as well as the people around you. So that is when anger becomes a problem. Let's now take a look at some emotional symptoms of anger. There are a number of emotions that go hand in hand with anger. You may have noticed the following emotional symptoms before, during, or after an episode of anger. You could be irritable, you could be frustrated, you could be anxious, you could have fits of rage, you could be stressed out, you could be feeling overwhelmed, you could even be feeling guilty. So these are like some very common emotional symptoms that you experience when you're angry. Anger affects different parts of your body as well, including your heart, your brain, your muscles. There was a study that was conducted in 2011 which found that anger also causes an increase in testosterone levels and a decrease in cortisol levels, which means the physical signs and symptoms of anger might include increased blood pressure, increased heart rates, palpitations, a tingling sensation, at the tip of your fingers and so on, and muscle tensions. So these might be some physical symptoms of anger. I have a quote for you at this point that suggests that though all of us experience anger at some point of time, we need to have the ability to constantly keep it in check, to constantly keep it under control. And what is that? Because control your anger, it is only one letter away from danger. Right? Okay. Now, we need to realize that anger is not something that occurs all on a sudden. There's a build-up process behind it. Something which you would call an anger cycle. And this anger build-up process consists of a few phases. let's take a look at what these different phases are, how it is that anger builds up in you as a person. Phase 1 is a triggering event. Like, if you look around you, there are any number of anger triggers all around us, and they constantly bump into them every day in our lives. You can very easily identify places or times when you get angry, and these could include, behind the wheel when you're driving to work, for instance, you could get angry because of an irresponsible driver in front of you. You could feel angry at work. You could feel angry when you're stressed. You could feel angry with certain people in particular. You could feel angry when you're drinking, when you have been drinking, or when you have been using some other substances. You could feel angry when you're hungry or when you're tired. So like these are all like different triggering events, people, situations, and places that trigger anger in you. That is phase 1. So once we have these triggers, then what happens? As a result of the triggering event, a stream of negative thoughts start flowing into your mind. He is always like this. This person, she never really cares. She is always disrespectful. He is so selfish. He is so foolish. He is so slow. She is so irritating, and so on and so forth. Like lots and lots of negative thoughts start flowing into your mind. And these thoughts might be irrational, but these negative thoughts lead to negative emotions. Like, for instance, rage towards a slow driver in front of you, or anger towards a student who forgot a issue in the morning. This might sort of manifest itself in different ways. So negative thoughts almost always lead to negative emotions. So then what happens? You have an emotional response towards it. The body immediately starts responding to these emotional responses, and your heart starts beating faster. You start sweating, you start shaking, you start fidgeting, you start stammering, and so on and so forth. So there's an emotional response to the kind of emotions that you experience within yourself. And then you have the physical symptoms. So the person responds based on the negative thoughts, emotional symptoms, and the physical symptoms like, sweating and so on and so forth, and then puts forward what you call a behavioral response. Now this behavioral response might be in the form of a fight, a physical attack, or a verbal attack, banging on the table or smashing down something, shouting and yelling at someone and so on and so forth. So this is the final phase, which is the behavioral response. So these are the 5 phases that make up the anger build-up. The anger build-up process, in fact, is made up of these 5 different phases. Now let's take a look at the anger cycle. Something that we just discussed. This is the anger cycle in a single frame. So you start off with a triggering event, and then you move on to negative thoughts, and then an emotional response, physical symptoms, and then finally you have the behavioral response. So this is the cycle of anger in a single frame. Which brings us to quote number 2, anger doesn't exist as a separate entity. It is not something that is separate from us, and often it is a hidden cause. And often the hidden cause is something called pain. So where there's anger, there's always pain underneath. Now, how do you understand anger? Have you heard of the concept of the anger iceberg? The anger iceberg was first coined by the Gottman Institute, a team of researchers, in fact, who were spearheaded by psychologists John and Julie Gottman. And their mission was actually to help couples and families work through difficulties and cultivate stronger, more loving relationships. So this research, in fact, led to an understanding of anger as often a mask or cover for deeper emotions that are within us. So this is why it's called the iceberg, the anger iceberg. Think of anger like an iceberg, a large piece of ice that is found floating in the open ocean, and most of the iceberg is hidden below the surface of the water. Similarly, when we are angry, what happens is there are usually other emotions that are hidden beneath the surface of anger. It's easy to see a person's anger, but it can be difficult to see the underlying feelings or emotions that the anger is protecting. And these feelings might be sadness, loneliness, disappointment, embarrassment, hurt, pain, frustration, grief, anxiety. You might be stressed or guilty or shameful, regretful. danger, overwhelmed, fear, helplessness, so on and so forth, like lots and lots of unexpressed emotions that are lying beneath the iceberg, that the portion outside the ocean is covering up. So anger is covering up from all these unexpressed emotions that are lying beneath it. So this is why it's called the anger iceberg. Now, what is your anger style? Have you ever thought about it? We might have all, felt angry at some point of time or the other, but have you ever actually determined the kind of anger style that you have? Which category of anger do you usually express? Which category of anger do you usually experience? Let's take a look at some common types of anger. Assertive anger, for instance. This is really constructive type of anger. If this is your type of anger, you use your feelings of frustration or rage as a catalyst for a very positive change. Rather than avoiding confrontation, internalizing anger, or resorting to verbal insults and physical outbursts and all that, what you do is you express your anger in ways that create change, and you express your anger in ways that get you closer to having your wants and your needs and all met, realized, without causing distress or destruction. So you are using anger in a very positive way to create positive results. That's what you do. So expressing anger assertively helps you address what you want without transgressing, other people's rights or emotions. So if you are a person who expresses assertive anger, then it's a very good thing. Behavioral anger is a choice to react physically towards the feeling of anger. The form of anger is often physical. It's very aggressive, or at the time very extreme, and at the end of the other spectrum, it's very violent usually. So aggression in behavior that has an intended motivation to cause harm to someone else who doesn't wish for it. You might turn extremely abusive. You might turn extremely violent if you are experiencing behavioral anger. And this might look like, breaking or throwing things, or physically intimidating, threatening someone, attacking someone, and so on. So expressing anger by using behavioral aggression often has a very negative impact on other people, on the people around you. So if you're having a behavioral aggressive anger type, then it's high time that you realize that you need to change your anger style. Behavioral anger is not something that we really want. Then you have something called chronic anger. So chronic anger is like an ongoing, a general sense of resentment towards all people, a sweeping sense of anger, a sweeping sense of frustration with certain circumstances. You might even feel anger towards oneself commonly, very commonly. So it's embodied by a sense of nagging, a perpetual irritation that keeps on, irritating you in some corner of your mind. The prolonged nature of this type of anger can have it can have real adverse effects on one's health and well-being. If you are constantly having negative thoughts, if you are constantly having negative emotions towards the people around you, if you are chronically angry, continually angry, then it's bound to have lots of impact, a negative impact on your physical and emotional well-being. So this is again an anger style that we need to avoid. Chronic anger, no. Then you have something called overwhelmed anger. Overwhelmed means, the word itself means uncontrolled. It occurs when you feel that a situation or circumstance is beyond our control, resulting in feeling of hopelessness or frustration. So this type of anger is very common when we have taken too much responsibility, or when unexpected life events have overthrown our usual capacity to cope with stress. So what do you do here? Anger here is an emotion that is trying to alert us that we don't feel like there's enough in the tank to handle all these stressors, that are stacking up in front of us. So even if we are not finding the right words to put to it, so you feel overwhelmed, you feel drained out, you feel extremely tired and down, due to the anger feelings that you have within us. Then you have something called retaliatory anger. This is usually an instinctual response to being confronted or attacked by someone else. So it's one of the most common types of anger. It's motivated by revenge for a perceived wrong. Vengeful anger, that's what you call it. Revengeful anger. So this can also be deliberate and purposeful. So it often aims to intimidate other people by asserting control over a situation. You may even, usually what happens is it may only serve to escalate tensions. So retaliatory anger is again one kind of anger that you need to be really, really away from. And the last one is something called self-abusive anger. Now this is again probably an anger style that has been experienced by several of us. If you have been experiencing a sense of hopelessness, if you have been feeling hopeless, if you have been feeling unworthy, humiliated, or ashamed of yourself, you might internalize those feelings and express anger, via negative self-talk, self-harm, substance use, disordered eating, and so on and so forth. Alternatively, what happens is you may find yourself, lashing out at the people around you. Actually, you are lashing out at yourself, but then you're expressing it through so many other, outlets that you have found around yourself. So self-abusive anger is again destructive anger. So what is anger management all about? Anger management is very simply stated, it's just a psychotherapeutic program for anger prevention and control. And it has been often found to be a very effective strategy for deploying your anger successfully. So many people think actually that anger management is about learning to suppress your anger. No, but never getting angry is not a healthy goal. Anger will come. Anger will come out, rather, regardless of how hard you try to, tamp it down and how hard you try to press it down. The true goal of anger management is not to suppress feelings of anger, but rather to understand the message behind the emotion and express it in a very healthy way without losing your control. So when you do, you will not only feel better, you will also be more likely to get your needs met. Be better able to manage conflict in your life and to strengthen the relationships that you have around you. So mastering the art of anger management takes a lot of work. And the more you practice, the easier it will get. The payoff, in fact, the result is huge. Learning to control your anger and expressing it appropriately will help you, build better relationships, achieve your goals, and, of course, lead a satisfying, a more healthier life. We also need to take a quick look at what the consequences of anger might be. If your anger is not under control, what might be the consequences that it has? One is chronic anger that flares up all the time, or spirals out of control, can have serious consequences for you. Physical health is the most important thing. Constantly, if you're a person who constantly operates at high levels of stress or anger, it makes you more susceptible to heart disease. It makes you more susceptible to diabetes. You might have a weakened immune system. You might have long sleepless nights. You might be an insomniac, as they call it. You might have high blood pressure, and so on and so forth. These might be some of the consequences on your physical health. It also is bound to have a few consequences on your mental health as well. Chronic anger consumes huge amounts of mental energy. It clouds your thinking. It makes it so much hard to concentrate or enjoy your life. And it can lead to stress. It can lead to depression. It can lead to several other mental problems. So these are some consequences of anger on your physical and mental health. It might also have consequences on your career. Constructive criticism, creative differences, heated debate, all these can be healthy. But lashing out constantly on your colleagues alienate them, right? You can't possibly lash out on your colleagues and your supervisors or your clients and so on and so forth constantly, because it erodes their respect. So relationships also suffer because of anger. Anger can cause lasting scars in people. In the people you love most, on your family, it can get in the way of friendships, it can get in the way of your work relationships. And if you are a person who has explosive anger, it makes it hard for others to trust you. It makes it hard for others to speak honestly with you or feel comfortable with you. And this is especially damaging if you have small children around you. So these are some of the consequences of anger. Now, It is important for all of us individuals, but it's especially in particular it is important to teachers and for people who are constantly interacting, who are in such positions, where you have to constantly interact with other people. You need not necessarily be a teacher alone, but if you are a teacher especially, you have to be in control of your anger. Why is that? This is because of the phenomenon of emotional contagion. Now, what is emotional contagion? You're having a great day, and you're very happy, you're feeling very happy, and then you suddenly listen to a melancholic song, a very sad song on the radio. So have you noticed that there is an immediate change in your mood? See, why is it that we walk out of cinema halls playing a comedy film with a broad smile plastered across our faces? Why is it that you hear distressing news of the coronavirus all the time on television and make sure that you wash your hands more often in the next few minutes? This is called the mood contagion. And the mood contagion is when individuals exhibit a very natural tendency to express and feel emotions that are similar to the ones that they see around them. It's a kind of social influence, and this is a reason why when somebody tells you that with a broad smile that she has passed the test, you smile as well. This phenomenon could have a huge impact if you are a person, who interacts with a lot of people every day. If you are in the classroom, for instance, if you are a teacher, and this can have a huge impact in the classroom, since the mood of the teacher is invariably reflected on the mood of the students, and often vice versa. You start the class with a smile, you have so many smiles thrown back at you. You start the class with a frown, more frowns are likely to follow. So an emotionally intelligent person keeps this in mind all the time, and often keeps track of how this emotional contagion works, and even makes use of it, to his or her disadvantage or advantage. Now, control your anger before it controls you. If you have a hot temper, you may feel like it's out of your hands, and there's little that you can do to tame this beast that you're feeling, that has been unleashed within you. But you have more control over your anger than you possibly think. With insight about the real reasons for your anger and these anger management tools, you can even learn to express your emotions without hurting others, and you can keep your temper, your anger from hijacking your life. So control your anger before it starts controlling you, and I've got several small suggestions for you that could be of help to you the next time you're having an anger attack or the next time you're feeling terribly angry. So let's take a look at what these are. Tip 1, count down. Now, some of you might already be familiar with this. Count down to 10. Or if you're really mad, if you're really angry, start at 100 and then go down 100, 99, 98, 98, 97, 96, 95, and so on until you reach 1. And in the time it takes you to count, your heart rate will slow down and your anger will most likely subside. So if you are a little angry, start a countdown from 10 and go down to 1. If you are like really angry, start counting down from 100 and count down till 1. This is a trick that really works. Countdown has been considered to be one of the most expressive and one of the most influential and one of the most foolproof methods that you could probably use to control your anger. The second one is, of course, breathing. Your breath becomes shallower, it speeds up as you become angry. Reverse that trend. When you're angry, start taking slow, deep breaths from your nose and exhaling out of your mouth like for several moments. And the more you breathe, the calmer you become. So start breathing. Just move away from the spot if it's possible and take a few deep breaths and exhale as slowly as you possibly can. So breathing is again very helpful in anger management. Now, if it's possible, this is not always possible, but if it's possible, you can go for a walk, because exercise helps calm down your nerves, and it reduces your anger. So if it's possible, go for a walk, or if it's possible, ride your bike. Just do a few sit-ups if it's possible. Anything in fact that gets your limbs pumping is good for your mind and body and sort of relaxes you. Tip 4 is progressive relaxation. Now, have you heard of this tip? It's a very interesting tip. In fact, Dr. Edmund Jacobson is the person behind progressive relaxation. And it's a type of therapy, in fact, that focuses on tightening or relaxing specific muscle groups in sequence. It's also known as progressive relaxation therapy. So what you do is by concentrating on specific areas, for instance, on your thighs, for instance, or on your calves, instance, or on your limbs or your hands, or like any specific areas of your body, you focus on those specific areas of your body and then you start relaxing them. You can become more aware of your body and your physical sensations. So focus on any one particular area of your body, a group of muscles, and you tell them, you tell those particular group of muscles to relax themselves, and this is how it happens. So you experience these physical sensations yourselves through this progressive relaxation therapy or technique. You could repeat a mantra. This is again a very effective anger management tip. Now the word mantra itself is derived from two Sanskrit words. One is manas, mind, and the other one is tara, which is tool. So mantra literally means a tool for the mind. So this was actually designed to help people across the world, find a word or a phrase that helps you calm down and which helps you refocus. So repeat that word again and again to yourself when you're upset. Relax might be the word. All is well might be the mantra. Take it easy might be the mantra. You'll be okay might be the mantra, or any other simple word that you feel relaxes you. That could be your mantra. So when you feel angry, start repeating the mantra in your mind for a few seconds, for a few minutes, until the feeling of anger just ebbs away a little bit. So that is again, the use of the mantra is supposed to be very, very, very effective. Stretching, yes. We have already talked about exercise, but neck rolls and shoulder rolls in particular are very good examples of non-strenuous yoga-like movements. That these can actually help you control your body and harness your emotions. You don't need any fancy equipment, or you don't need to go to the gym or anything. You could just stretch around a little bit, and it helps you sort of see things in perspective. Then you can also try out something called mental distancing. Now, what do you mean by mental distancing? You can slip into a quiet room. If it's available, you can go into a quiet room. You can just close your eyes and practice visualizing yourself in a relaxing scene. Focus on the details in the imaginary scene. You could probably imagine yourself sitting beside a stream, for instance. What color is the water? Or you could probably imagine yourself roaming around in a valley, in a mountain valley. How tall are those mountains? How green is the valley? So what are the chirping birds? What do the chirping birds sound like? And so on and so forth. This practice can help you find calm amidst anger. So you're imagining yourself in an imaginary situation, and you're alone in a single room. You could just distance yourself away mentally from the immediate situation that is causing you anger. Music can be helpful. It could be a helpful tool in learning to manage strong emotions like anger, and let just music carry you away from your feelings. Plug in your earphones or whatever and find a quiet corner and listen to your favorite music and drive your anger away. I mean, these are not situations that are always possible, but if it's possible, if something is stressing you out, and if you feel that you're becoming angry for no particular reason, push in your earbuds and listen to some music. It's bound to have some effect on you. Stop the talk. Now this is again like very, very, very important. We need to understand there's a limbic system in your brain, that is in charge of your emotions. And then there's something called the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is in charge of reasoning. So it emits a response based on the emotions. Often what happens is the time gap between the generation of these emotions and the response that follows it is too small. So the response is instinctive. It is immediate. So when someone questions your authority in the class, if you're a teacher, and when some boy or a girl probably questions your authority in the class, you immediately become angry. So that there's no gap between the emotion and the response. So when a student counters you with what sounds like a rude question, you immediately flare up. But with self-awareness, what happens is we gain the ability to identify these red flags, that create these emotions. And once it happens, we can possibly draw free prefrontal cortex some time to come up with a response. So there should be a gap between the response and the emotion that you've experienced. So you may be tempted when you're steamed to let the angry words fly, but you're more likely to do harm than good. If you're becoming angry. So pretend that your lips are glued shut, just like you have a cellophane tape across your lips, just like you did as a kid. And this moment without speaking will give you the time to collect your thoughts. So when you're becoming extremely angry, immediately what you can do is imagine that a cellophane tape has been stuck across your lips, and just give it a couple of minutes, just give it a couple of moments before you utter that response. So most probably the response is likely to be not as harmful as otherwise. So stop the talk. Do not immediately blurt out everything that comes to your mind. Okay. Now give yourself a break. Take a break if it's possible, sit away from others, and in this quiet time you can process events. You can return to your emotions. You can return to your not just returning to your emotions, you can wait for them to become neutral. So you may even find this time away from others to be helpful, if you want to schedule it into your daily routine. I mean, like, if every time, I believe that all of us need to have a break time every day. So take the break, take the rightful break, and get your emotions on track. That is again something that we need to do. Do something good. Harness your angry energy. Now, how do you how do you harness your angry energy? You can sign a petition. You can write a note to an official. Do something good for somebody else. You pour your energy and anger and everything, emotions, into something that's very healthy and productive. Do something good. Write. What you can't say, you can probably write. See, you might need to control some immediate verbal outbursts, but you can write it down always, because not everybody is going to read what you're going to write. So if you're feeling really angry, take down a paper and write down what you're feeling instead of sort of blurting it out. That could be very, very, very helpful. So jot down what you're feeling and how you want to respond to the emotion that you're feeling. And processing it through the written word, in fact, can help you calm down and reassess the events, leading up to your feelings. If possible, you can find immediate solutions. This is not always possible, but if possible, you can find immediate solutions. You might be angry that your child has once again left their room in a mess before going to visit a friend. So what you can do is just shut the door. Do not, immediately respond to it. You can temporarily end your anger by putting it out of your view. That is a solution there. So look for similar resolutions to any situations that you have all around you. Then you can rehearse responses also. Prevent an outburst by rehearsing what you're going to say. If you have an idea as to how the situation is going to be, you can always rehearse a response also. So what you're going to say or how you're going to approach the problem in the future. So the rehearsal period, in fact, will give you, time to role play several possible solutions, so your response will not be that brutal. Your response might not be that angry, So you can, if possible, you can rehearse your responses. Now, this universal stop sign that you see on the screen, it can help calm you down when you're angry. It can calm you down and it can help stop becoming angry. It's a quick way to help you visualize the need to halt yourself, your reactions, your, emotions. When you feel that the anger is building up in front of you, immediately picturize the stop sign within you. And it sort of helps you calm down a little bit, and then you can walk away from that moment. So you can always picture a stop sign. Then, if possible, again, like these are not always possible, but if possible, change of routine could also help you control your emotions. If your slow commute to your work is making you angry every day because every day morning, the traffic jam that is constantly troubling you on your way to work. So this is a routine that has been driving you crazy, and what happens is, at the end of the drive, you end up becoming very angry and you enter the office terribly angry. So this is the routine that has been driving you crazy. So what do? you change your routine. You go by another road, probably that's going to take you extra 10-15 minutes, but then you have a calm drive and you start entering the office as a calm person. So you change your routine. If it's possible, change your routine. That is definitely something that could be considered. Talk to a friend, and don't stuff in all the events, don't keep it all down, all the events that have been making you angry. Help yourself process and understand what happened by talking with a trusted friend, a supportive friend if you have, who can possibly provide a new perspective, who can possibly understand you better. Then, of course, the best way to counter anger is always by using humor. So diffuse your anger by, you could look for ways to laugh, whether that's playing with your kids, whether you're playing with your children, or watching a comedy show on television, or scrolling memes on Facebook, or whatever. I mean, try to sort of, see the whole thing in a lighter spirit, and if possible, again, like it's not always possible, but if possible, do try to laugh. Practice gratitude. Take a moment to focus on what is right when everything feels wrong. And this again helps a lot. I mean, realizing how many good things you have in your life, this can help you neutralize your anger and turn around the situation. The timer trick is quite similar to, the countdown trick that we discussed at the beginning. The first thing that comes to your mind when you're angry, most likely, the first thing that comes to your mind when you're angry is something that you should never say. So give yourself a set time before you respond. Okay, 5 seconds. And then after that, respond. So this timer will actually help you be calmer, and it will help you become more concise. Letter writing is similar to the strategy that we discussed earlier, writing down. You could write imaginary letters to your friends in which you experience, all kinds of emotions that you have been experiencing. Imaginary letters. That again helps you calm down a lot. And then forgiveness. It is not very easy, I know. I mean, like forgiving everyone around you for all the bad things that they have done to you. It is not something that is very easy. But again, finding the courage to forgive something who has wronged you, takes a lot of emotional skill. If you can't go that far, you can at least pretend that you're forgiving them, and you will feel that your anger, is gradually slipping away. Empathy. Try to walk in the other person's shoes and see the situation from their perspective as well. And when you tell the story or relive the events as they saw it, you may gain a new understanding. You may become less angry. And you could express it. It's okay, in fact, to say how you feel. As long as you handle it in the right way, it's fine. Outbursts, don't solve any problems. But mature dialogue, mature conversations can help reduce your stress. This can sort of ease out your anger. So it may even help to prevent future problems. So simply express what you feel instead of keeping it all bottled up within yourself. And the last one, the last simple tip that I have is find a creative channel. Turn your anger into a tangible production. You can consider different hobbies like painting, gardening, or writing poetry, and so on and so forth. Just don't sit down in a corner and brood yourself and let that anger build up. Immediately just walk away from the point of action, as they call it, and indulge yourself in something that you really like. And emotions are very powerful tools, and for creative individuals in particular, and use your emotions to reduce your anger through a creative channel that you have developed for yourself. Now, there are 3 questions that we need to ask ourselves every time we get angry, because finding the answers to these 3 questions will help us understand if our anger is justifiable or not. The first question is my anger legitimate? Do I have a real reason to be angry? Or is the reason imaginary? Or is the reason something that I have cooked up myself? So that is one thing. The second one is, do I have a right to be angry in this particular situation? Do I have a right to be angry, or am I just being very unjust? And what good will it do if I become angry? Is it going to have a productive result? Is my anger going to have a productive result, or is it going to be just a destructive thing? So these are the 3 questions that we need to consider ourselves before we become angry, or the next time you become angry. These are the 3 questions that we can always ask yourself. Now, anger is a very, very natural emotion. It's a very normal emotion that everyone experiences from time to time. But however, if you feel that your anger is turning into aggression or outbursts, you need to find healthy ways to deal with it. If these tips don't help, you need to consider talking to your doctor even, because a mental health specialist or a therapist can help you work through, underlying factors that may contribute to anger and other emotional issues. Let me wind up with a beautiful, worthy thought. It's a quote by none other than Walter Emerson, who says, "For every minute you are angry, you lose 60 seconds of happiness." Thank you so much for a very patient listening. I hope you have a very great day ahead.
Thank you, sir. Now I would like to welcome Dr.N.Ramakrishnan, sir, to address the resource person and participants.
Thank you, Mrs. Muthurani. First of all, I would like to say a very good evening to our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Registrar in Charge, Controller in Charge, all professors of TNTU, and associate professors and assistant professors, and participants from various parts of our country, and MEd, MPhil, PhD scholars, B.Ed, M.Ed students, and all who are present. My best wishes, and I say very good evening to you all. I am very happy that Professor Velayuthan Nair is a great scholar. A good human being and excellent. And I would like to say, and I thought that long back, I thought for a very long time I have been thinking that in one of our webinars, definitely Professor Velayuthan Nair should be given a chance, because it will help all of us to get get knowledge and some inputs regarding psychology, and I think he has proved his mettle. In that way, the presentation was excellent, and in our university, presently NCT inspection is going on, and I was with Vice Chancellor and Registrar in Charge, all the professors and NCT members. I showed to them all your presentation, and they all appreciated. And I thank Professor Velayuthan Nair for having given a wonderful lecture. Anger management, this is very much essential at present. And the way in which you gave some mantras and the other things, how to control your anger, how to subside your anger, and that is the process that we call as sublimation. And for various tips you have given, and for all these, I thank you so much, Velayuthan Nair. I fondly call you as Velu, and thank you so much for having spent your valuable time and having given a wonderful lecture, and your presentation was very nice, and the PPT was very, very nice, and I enjoyed seeing all those images. Thank you, Professor Velayuthan Nair. On behalf of all of us in TNTU, Tamilnadu Teachers Education University, I thank you for giving a wonderful lecture. Support us, you continue to give lecture on various topics, and we will grow with you. Thank you, Professor Velayuthan. Thank you so much. Thank you, Muthurani. Thank you, Principal, my team members, all the team members. I would like to mention my team members because they are of great support to me. Priscilla, Prasita, Divya, Jamunarani, Revati, Suganya, Muthurani, Murgeswari, Umarani, and Murgeswari, Umarani, all and Damodaran, my lovable scholar, and Damodaran, and all those who are present. Once again, I thank you all. Thank you for the wonderful opportunity. Thank you, Professor Velayuthan. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for having invited me. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Shall I wind up the session, sir?
I will wind up the session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.